his theory, he says, is that no one is smart enough to come up with 20 bad ideas in a row.
Once a writer has processed their own defining moments, how do they begin to apply that knowledge to the characters that they create?
Well, when I think about applying the idea of defining moments to characters, I think in terms of these categories. So if I've got a character who has a dream, I've already looked back at my moment of watching Ordinary People and seeing this dream of somehow getting my fingers into the clay of filmmaking. So I know about how at least one dream was born. Then I can come to my character and say, for this character, what does it look like when their dream was born? Now, their dream may be to be an astronaut. And so I would think about, well, what is analogous from my experience to their experience? I was watching a movie. An astronaut dream might have been born as somebody who was watching a shuttle launch or the tragic loss of a shuttle. That immediately interests my writer's brain because it's unexpected that you would see a catastrophic loss of a space shuttle and say, that's what I want to do. But I think that's actually often how it works. I've described television writing to aspiring writers and the atmosphere in the writer's room and how you have to compete to get your joke on the page and how cutthroat that can be. And I think I've just talked everyone out of wanting to be a television writer. And then people will crowd to the front and say, that sounds fantastic. That's exactly what I want to do. So that tells me that sometimes it's even seeing a story that seems like it would drive you away that actually attracts the diehard dreamer. So I bring that sort of general experience from life. I kind of mix it up with what I've observed in myself. And I will often try to brainstorm a bunch of different options of what that defining moment might be until I find one that both feels emotionally real and also makes an interesting story, because I might have the character tell the story, or we may flash back to see that story. The writer Bill Marsili, who wrote the film Deja Vu, talks about his discipline of brainstorming 20 options for any creative choice. And his theory, he says, is that no one is smart enough to come up with 20 bad ideas in a row. So one of your 20 ideas is bound to be decent. So I've taken to calling that Marsili's rule of 20. It is a discipline because often when we're coming up with, say, a potential defining moment for a character, we want to just jump at the first thing that occurs to us. Part of becoming a mature writer is recognizing that it's not supposed to be that easy. And so we want to stick with it and keep coming up with options so that we don't pick the first thing that occurs to us, which probably is the first thing that is going to occur to everyone else. We want to get to something else further down the line that's unexpected, that we haven't seen before. And if I'm drawing from my own life experiences, that has a real chance of being fresh because it's drawn from life, not from the movies. So that would be how I would go about finding, say, one defining moment. So a dream is born. Maybe in the course of the film, this dream is going to die. So then I would look at my own life and also lives of people around me that I know well and say, where have I seen a dream die? And I can think for myself a defining moment where dreams died. And in my experience, dreams die slowly. They die kicking and screaming. We don't want to admit that thing that you dreamed is not going to happen. And so I would draw on that and say, how do I bring that to this character? And I would keep doing that until I had that handful of moments that gives me an understanding of this character that makes them complex and relatable and interesting. And when I can feel myself when a character starts to come alive in this way. And I know I want to spend time with that character, and I want to hear the dialogue that they're going to say. And I want to see them get into whatever trouble the story is getting them into. And I want to see them struggle to get out of that trouble, to get to their goal. And I also want to watch them grow over the course of that story, either for good or for ill. They're going to change. And they're going to change in these moments, these pivot points. And so I just keep at it until I feel like I have this full character. It's an organic, messy process, definitely not paint by the numbers, but having my own history and an understanding of myself to draw on, also having this sort of set of characteristics of defining moments, helps me at least know where to look. And then I try to keep looking until I found what I need to find.
It's interesting because we're talking about defining moments for various characters and knowing them. Sometimes if I've watched a biopic, I feel as if the filmmaker has tried to cram in so many defining moments that it loses some of the impact of them. And I think it's because there's so much to tell.
Yeah.
But then I've seen documentaries where they also do the same, and for some reason it lands better. I don't know why that would be.
I don't know. I do think that the best biopics tend to focus on a single event. I think of Spielberg's Lincoln. And, we know so much of Abraham Lincoln's life and career. And Spielberg and Tony Kushner, the screenwriter, chose to focus on just a single vote in the U.S. House of Representatives about the amendment to the Constitution that outlawed slavery. And so out of everything you could look at in Lincoln's life and career, the film focuses on a single event. And I think we get a bunch more dramatic power focused when we do that. And it can be really tempting if you're doing a biopic because so many interesting things happened in many people's lives. If we were doing Winston Churchill, there'd be so many things to focus on. But the fantastic film Darkest Hour focuses very specifically on the couple of weeks leading up to Winston Churchill's speech to Parliament, where he declares we're going to fight on the beaches, we're going to fight on the landing fields, where he galvanizes the British people to oppose the Nazis. That is a dramatic move to restrict yourself in that way. And at the risk of sounding disgustingly like a film professor, I'll go back to Aristotle one more time. And Aristotle, as long ago as that, said that the drama should be about a single event. And I think he's right. And I think that for reasons I don't understand, we are geared toward a story of a hero struggling against obstacles to reach a goal. There is a unity to drama that both focuses its power, but also helps to give it meaning, because there's a configuration of events that becomes meaningful. These choices and these actions led to this outcome. So it gives us this sense of completion that I think it's one of the things that we long for from our stories.